Okay, the first chapter is 1.1 in pre-calc. Getting started, we're going to look at some linear equations, something that you should be familiar with out of Algebra 2. You'll notice that we have the slope formula again, which is your change in y over the change in x. I like to tell students y to the sky. Remember to keep your y value on the top. You'll notice a couple ways of writing it. Depending on what you pick for your points, if you call something point 1 and point 2, you either go the 2's minus the 1's or the 1's minus the 2's, but you cannot, at the end here, do a 2 minus 1 and 1 minus 2. So I'm going to pause the video and you're going to work out the slope equation for each one in these examples here. And then, so pause it and then come back and look at the answers. You do the work. Okay, so we're back down. You can see the examples A, B, C here. You're going to get a 6 over 4 that's negative. Reduce that to a negative 3/2. Part B, you get an answer of 0. Part C, you get an answer that's undefined. You must write undefined. So notice the difference between B and C and plan accordingly. So then this next box is simply talking about some slopes. So up to the right, positive slope, down to the right, negative slope, zero slope is horizontal, and a line with undefined slope is vertical. So again, pay attention to 3 and 4. Which one has slope, which one does not have slope. All right, so this next one, we're looking at point slope form, and there are some different things you have to understand. We have the slope formula again, and if I would happen to multiply by the x2 minus x1 on both sides of this, I end up with y2 minus y1 is equal to slope x2 minus x1. Very traditional way of writing the point slope form, but many people are used to having this y values taken to the end, and this is now y equals x minus x1 technically plus y1. And this is our point slope formula out of Algebra 2. So now what we want to do is go ahead and in the first example, we're going to use this equation, and we're going to, with a point that goes through 2, 7, and it has a slope of negative 3. So I can write y equals negative 3x minus, and drop the 2 in there, and then drop the 7 there, and we actually are done. So now I'm going to be able to go over to my calculator and show the difference, or show that the 2, 7 is in the table. So now with my calculator, I can go to the y equals screen and I can type in negative 3 parentheses x minus 2 plus 7. That's what the graph would look like. And then in the table, I can see that 2, 7 is located in my table, which indicates that my line is working. So this is a DIY. Go ahead and use the point 4, 3 with a slope of 2. Write the equation of the line in point slope form. Pause the video and come back and look at the answer. So in this example, somebody wrote it with the 3 over on this side, so you would say y minus 3, but I moved it to this side. So the 2 is my slope. I wrote x minus negative 4, so I don't like the double sign. So double negative gives me positive 4. And then I put the plus 3 over here. So then what we can do, if you look through this, they're going through it. This is what they call point slope form. This is my point slope form. And then, so that we're all the same, because you can have two different point slope forms, we're going to just go ahead and simplify everything so that it's over here, which is called slope intercept form. Everybody would have one slope intercept form. In example 3, we're going to have to calculate our own slope. So I would go ahead and do my 11 minus 3 and 7 minus 9, and I will get 8 over negative 2, which would simplify to negative 4. So using that particular slope, pick either point, 7, 11 or 9, 3. So let's take the 7, 11, and I would write y equals negative 4x minus 7 plus the 11. Now that's point slope form, but like I said in the previous example, many different, well not many, but you can have two different forms, and it gets a little confusing. So let's take this and simplify it into slope intercept. So I will distribute the negative 4, which would be negative 4x plus 28 plus 11. So I get a final answer of negative 4x plus 39, which would be a great answer. So these next two examples are simply talking about horizontal and vertical lines, and you just kind of want to pay attention that you don't mess them up. I don't think people don't understand them, they just get mixed up. So if I take a point which is 5, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I look at a slope that's 0, that's a horizontal line. And so a lot of times what students say is that, oh, the x is horizontal and therefore my equation is x equals something. But what you want to be careful about is when you draw dots along this point, what you'll find out is that the y is stuck. So if the y is stuck, we're just going to write y is stuck at 4 all the way across. So horizontal lines are y equals lines. Now if you forget this, you can go ahead and use the point slope form and stuff, and it will work just fine. In the next example, we have undefined slope. So the same thing would be true. You would have negative 1, 3, and so your line would be vertical now, and all of these dots would be lined up along that, which means your x is stuck. And where is x stuck? X is stuck at negative 1. That was the first dot. However, you could not use point slope form because there's no way to plug in an undefined slope. The final form of a line is what is called general form, and the textbook tends to write it like this. I go ahead and write it with the c on the other side, so I would tend to write mine ax plus by is equal to c. This allows me to go ahead and do an intercept table very quickly. But the three rules are no fractions, decimals, must be in the order shown, and the leading coefficient must be positive. So in this first example, I notice that I have a 3 and a 5 for the denominator. So I have a common multiple of 15. So if I multiply every term by 15, then I'll get 15y. 1/3 of 15 is 5. And again, if fractions are difficult, use a graphing calculator. And then the last one would be a 12. So I'm done with rule number 1. No fractions, no decimals. Then the second thing is I'm going to move the 5x to this side. So it comes over as a negative or subtracted over. Then we have 15y is equal to 12. But the only thing wrong with this one is that the first thing has to be positive. And so we call it flipping the sign. Make the first one positive 5x. So the second one, the y value is positive now, so I have to make it negative. And the last one is positive. I'm going to make that negative. It's the same thing as multiplying every term by negative 1. There would be your general form equation. All right, we're going to have you do this next example as a DIY. I want you to take this negative 1/2 to the x and to the 4, and then see if you can put this in general form. Pause your video and then come back and look at the answer. Okay, so if you pause your video now, you come back and look at the answer. It's going to be located right down here. Although they have it written with the x plus 2y minus 2, I probably would write it so that it is the 2 on the other side. So I would write it x plus 2y equals 2. So I would bring this over here and just have my 2 sitting on this side. All right, so the last couple problems here, you have to know that parallel lines have same slope, perpendicular lines have opposite or negative reciprocals. Negative reciprocals. So the first thing they want us to do is find the slope of an intercept. The slope-intercept form of an equation that goes through 5, 7 and is parallel to this. So what I'm going to do is look at this and figure out the slope. The easiest way is to send the 6x to this side. So you have negative 2y is equal to 8 minus 6x. Then we'll divide by the negative 2 everywhere. And this number right here is my slope. So that's an m of 3, a slope of 3. And because it's parallel, I'm going to use that slope. So now I use 5, 7, and a slope of 3. So I'm going to write y equals 3x minus 5 plus 7, and now we're just going to clean this up. Y equals 3x minus 15 plus 7. So y equals 3x minus 8. So I want you to do the same thing for the perpendicular. Find the given slope. So find the slope, but with perpendicular, you're going to do the negative reciprocal. So you're going to make an opposite sign and flip it, and then bring it over here and do your point slope form into slope intercept. Okay, so if you do this particular one, you're going to move the 3x to the other side, and then you end up dividing everything by 2 right here, and so you get a slope of negative 3 halves. So we're going to use 2/3 because we're doing perpendicular, positive 2/3. And again, some of you might have a 1 over here. That's fine. Put a plus 1 over here instead of a negative 1. But the 2/3 goes in and your point goes in, and then this will be your final answer. 2/3 x plus 7/3.